At what density do you become a light body and no longer have a physical body? At what density do you go through the veil of forgetting? At what density is the veil lifted? These and many more questions will be answered today in the 7 densities of consciousness video that we have for you from the Law of One, the Raw Material. Stay tuned.
Back in a minute. And welcome back to Hollywood Frequency, the show dedicated to elevating consciousness. Today we're going to get into a very, very exciting topic. But before we go there, make sure you subscribe, like, share, and comment. But this is a positive zone only, no negative comments, please.
Yeah, negative comments are good, but for yourself.
Absolutely.
You know, positive is what we want below. Please do it if you like it.
Absolutely. All right, so today, guys, we're gonna get into something very, very dope. We're going to talk about the densities as described in the book, The Law of One, the Raw Material. When I say raw, I don't mean raw versus cooked. I'm talking about raw, the entity that I think existed thousands of years ago. Maybe you can shed some light on the raw. Who's the raw?
R-A, yeah, it's spelled R-A. Ra actually appeared in physical form in Egypt. And he did so because at that time, the Egyptian lifespan was only 30 years. And generally speaking, at least the information from the raw material that's channeled says that at 30 years old is when people start to seek spiritual enlightenment. So at that point, they realized the raw group, which is 6th density and an upper 6th density consciousness, came down as a wanderer to the 3rd density to bring this information to help enlighten and help those seek spiritual awareness in Egypt in the 3rd density.
Okay.
And the people who put the book out are the L&L Research Group, which stands for Love and Light.
That's right.
And Carla Ruckert was the channeler. And they brought this information forward because they were unsuccessful initially in Egypt in bringing the information forward. What happened is the Egyptians took the information and made it a proprietary knowledge that was only used for the elites. So the raw group, which is a social memory complex of the 6th density, decided that it was pointless to continue being here in human body, and they went back to their density and eventually came back in the 80s and channeled through Carla Ruckert with this information. And it's very valuable information. And there's 5 books, and to me, personally, it's the most powerful spiritual text I've read.
Yeah. So the Law of One is an idea that all is one, everyone is one, we're one with all of consciousness, everything that we see, we're connected to that. And
From
there's really
from thoughts to emotions, to people, to animals, to plants, we are all one. We're all part of the Creator. So we're all one. And imagine, Byron, if we actually lived that idea fully.
Yeah.
That I'm you, you are me.
It would be a lot less judgment. Because then it'd be like, okay, I'm attacking me right now.
Right.
I'm judging me right now. As opposed to being like, okay, that's me. Let me try to understand
See,
myself.
The illusion that the ego creates is that we are separate.
Yeah.
And the reality that the raw material brought forward is that we are one. And when we start to practice that, then we would treat people differently, because if I'm treating you, I'm treating me, and so on and so forth. So it's a very, very powerful text. Very powerful. And according to the raw material, the densities are an entanglement of light within a certain vibrational range. And the lower the density, the lower the vibrational rate. And as the vibration increases, so do the densities. And each density has its own energy level body that correlates to the energy center. For example, the 1st density is correlated to the red ray. So we're limited, generally speaking, to a certain extent to what we can do based on the densities that our body has a capability of. So as we move up in the densities, our energy centers open and we're capable of doing a lot more.
Right. So the idea is that all matter has consciousness to a certain degree.
To a certain degree.
And it all has a certain capacity of perception, expression, And so that really kind of defines what density level, say, a rock is versus
Sure.
an eagle.
Right. And as you move up in the densities, you're able to do a lot more and have access to a lot more. And it's very powerful. And we're going to go through each one of those. And I'm really excited. And we'll get into the first density.
So the first density, being and awareness, red way or root chakra, the density of consciousness, the mineral and water life, the planet learning from fire, wind, the awareness of being.
Right. Now, according to the book, The Raw Material, Raw states that perhaps it was 2 billion of our years.
Okay.
In the first density, we have organic matter, we have earth, water, fire, and air, these elements. Earth was in a state of the first density for billions of years where these elements reacted upon each other and with each other. And through this evolution of interactions, the second density was created.
So it was 2 billion years of just like fire, water, air, wind, elements.
These basic elements, yeah.
Got it.
The second density, growth and movement, orange ray, or the sacral chakra. Ra says that the second density was approximately 4.6 billion years. The second density is a density of higher plant life, animal life, which exists and is able to move on its own, without the upward drive towards the infinite. All biological life and organic matter that move on its own, microbial life, plants, animals, and consciousness becomes aware of itself through certain communications to others, and eventually understands it has awareness. And like dogs and dolphins, for example, have an awareness of themselves, we actually are ones who help dogs as our pets, the ones that we take in, to leave the pack. And what's so funny?
Your dog is snoring. Listen, guys. Second density, full display. There's a dog snoring in the background. This is a family show. It's all good. I just thought it was kind of funny that you. It's not a man snoring. It's a dog.
So
snoring.
this dog, I don't even notice it. He's talking over here. He's laughing at me. I don't even notice it. That's how used to it. This is Alfred. He's a second density being, and what happens with him is that we help him to individualize himself and have self-awareness. Right? We take them out of the pack and bring him to eventually the third density, when that you create ego, if you will. It's a sense of awareness. And that's what we do for the animals, for certain animals, and we help them move to the third density. There are 3 types of second density entities which become, shall we say, inspirited. The first is the animal, as we just talked about. That's the most predominant.
Right.
The second is, as Ra says, the vegetable, most especially that what you call the sound vibration, the tree, right? These entities are capable of giving and receiving enough love to become individualized. Interesting that love is part of that equation, right? Giving and receiving enough love. Like animals give a lot of love, they receive love.
And I speak to my plants at home, and I think they blossom.
Yes.
Because of my conversation, my songs, my poetry. That's another show.
Right. Well, they do. There's energy in every word we carry, right? Every word, every emotion has energy. The Masaru Emoto study, which we talked about in a previous video, basically exemplifies how someone can speak to water, and through their communications to water, they can create beautiful snowflakes and crystals by spreading love to the water, by speaking love, or by speaking hate, create a very nasty looking, murky, brownish water that looks very unappetizing. So, we went over the first density, we went to the second density, and now we're going to go into the third.
Yeah. Third density.
Third density, self-awareness, yellow ray,
Okay.
solar plexus chakra.
Yeah.
Third density is what we're in. This is a third density planet that's evolving towards fourth density. Some say that it's there. Some people think that it's transitioning right now. But we are currently third density beings in a third density / fourth, growing towards fourth density planet. Now, Ra says the third density is all about the choice of polarity. Negative, service to self; positive, service to others. And that's a big reason why we go through the veil of forgetting. I talked about that in the initial part of the video. The veil of forgetfulness is what we go through when we come to the third density. It's an opportunity for us to exhibit free will, to not know and have access to infinite intelligence, which has the answers pretty much to everything. And for us to be able to make a choice on our own if we want to be service to ourselves or service to others. And based upon that decision, we move up the densities in a positive manner, or we move down, or we go up the densities in a negative manner to a certain point. Then the negative actually has to go positive if they want to continue. Isn't that interesting?
Oh, yes.
But we're not going to go too far into that. But so you come here with the veil of forgetfulness. We don't know our past lives. We don't know how incredible we are and what we can create. And we learn about ourselves and what we really want to do and how we want to polarize towards positive or negative while we're here. They say that the third density is 75,000 years. So for example, in this planet, it's a 75,000 year cycle. It's usually 3 cycles of 25,000 years. And then the planet moves on to the fourth density, which is kind of where we're at now. There's a lot of suffering. The lifespan of an entity here is usually about 100 to 120 years. It's the shortest of all densities because there's so much suffering and so much spiritual growth and soul growth. So we don't really want to come here for too long.
Right.
Can you imagine the evolution of the soul is so heavy, and to go through that, we go through so many catalysts, so many different experiences to grow. It's short, it's intense, we don't remember our godhood, we have free will, which Ra actually says, and it's the only text that says the free will is the law of confusion. And we have another video about that coming out, where we talk about no free will in the higher densities. So stay tuned for that. That will come at some point. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah.
Ego, in the third density, ego is very rampant. The idea of separation, right, which Ra actually came down to talk about. It's a illusion and we're all one, but the ego sees us as separate. Oh, I'm different than you, you're different than me, we can never be the same, we can never be one. And if you look at a lot of the service to self negatively polarized entities and beings on Earth, continue to push and feed our egos and push the concept of not togetherness, of separation. You know, well, I can't be the same as you, Byron. You're black. I'm not black. Okay, I'm Jewish. You're Christian. We're different. You can't be the same as me. You don't have black hair. You're this, or whatever it is. You know, just any concept. The reality is we're all one. We're all a piece of the Creator. We all have a soul. You know, it's like, what is a skin? What is a race? What is a religion? Really, you know.
I like to interject. One of my favorite quotes is by MLK. It says, "The arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And when I hear that, it makes me think about all of this, you know, over how many millennial people argue over the slightest differences in physical features. You know what I mean? You got the Japanese versus the Koreans, you got the Hutus versus the Sunnis, or this tribe versus this tribe, and maybe they're arguing over slight differences between each other. So it's not even black and white sometimes. It's
just a piece of skin.
It's like
just a piece of skin.
Yeah, it's like
your nose looks a little different.
My tribe is 4 feet, and your tribe is 5 feet, and then we don't like you guys. You know what I'm saying?
It's all at the end of the day when the skin goes away, all the skulls look the same. You know, in a physical form.
Or any distinction. People find so many distinctions, but I think in the evolution of understanding oneness, I think as a species, people are going to that direction. But it's slow.
I feel if you're a polarizing positive, right? We come here to decide to which we're going to polarize towards, positive or negative, service to self or service to others. If you're on a service to others path, right, which in turn, when you service others, you're servicing yourself, right? You're interesting, right? You then, I believe, are headed towards that realization that we're all one, and that because you're doing for others, you know, you feel good afterwards. You know, you feel a good feeling when you do to others. But when you're service to self, you feel good when you do things just for yourself. You don't want to do things for others. You feel it as a waste of time. You want to do things just for yourself. You want to restrict free will. You want to impose your will on others. You know, you want to limit others' free will. You want to harness power. You know, these are the kind of things you do when you're service to self, and when you're service to others. All is accepted. All is love. You know, you accept someone's sexual orientation, someone's, you know, race or religion to you. That's fine. Like, what does it matter? You know, that doesn't mean nothing wrong with that. If someone doesn't like what you like, that's okay. Yeah. We're all a unique expression of the Creator. you know, at the end of the day. So this density is all about that. So once you understand these concepts that Ra is you know, bringing to the table, you look at the world a little bit differently. You don't take things so seriously. You know, when something happens, you start to look at it as a catalyst for spiritual growth, versus like, oh my God, the world is over, what a situation we're facing, it's the end of this. It's like, no, these are opportunities for us to polarize either further towards service to others or towards service to self. You know, there's a lot of things going on right now which have brought a lot of things to the table. A lot of new information has come to light. You know, to quote the Big Lebowski, and not a lot of new information has come to light, man. So you know, the dude abides with that information. You know, you another. It was another Big Lebowski pun if you are a fan of it. But
we'll have to tag that in the video. Go ahead.
But you know, so you know, you make this decision here by going through the veil of forgetfulness. You are able to make that decision, and that decision will propel you towards the next density if you have harvestability. Now, harvestability is a whole nother video, a whole nother subject matter, but it basically, just to boil it down to very small sentence or two, which doesn't cover it all, is where you are in your service to others or service to self evolution. So if you do 51% or more service to others, you could be eligible for harvest. And harvest is the word they use. It's a Christian word. It just means eligible, let's say, to go to the next density, the fourth density, which we'll talk about in a bit. It has less suffering. It's filled with more love.
Is it incarnated in physical form here on the planet?
And not on this planet, but on a fourth density planet, which could be the Earth, because the Earth is moving towards a fourth density. So, for example, Mars was a third density planet, and there was consciousness there in the third density. Ra talks about that. But the Mars was a very bellicose natured planet, lots of war, lots of combat. They blew up their atmosphere.
It's the god of war.
They blew up their atmosphere, and those souls had to go elsewhere. And that's, again, a little bit more complicated, and we can go into that at a later time. But the raw material talks about all this stuff. It's really, really a fantastic read. So you can elevate to the fourth density and harvest a fourth density positive, or you can actually also go through a harvest and become a fourth density negative. Isn't that interesting?
Okay.
So you can go, so that's why the third density is so important. It's where you make that choice, and you can either, or you can not go anywhere. You can just keep coming back to the third density. Well, you can come back to the third density over and over again.
Yeah, you know, I grew up with this idea of one life and then that's it, or it's not necessarily there's no afterlife. It's just that you don't come back. But as I got older, probably the last few years, I've suspended that belief and say, I don't know. Maybe, you know, I've never had a memory of a past life, like I was, you know, living in some other country in the 20s or whatever. Like I don't have any awareness of that, but I've suspended that belief just recently in the last few years. And when I say the word suspend, meaning like I'm open to like reading teachings. Okay, what would that look like? What does it look like? Maybe I come back. Maybe I didn't come back. Maybe I came again to learn certain things that I didn't learn. Like I've certainly learned a lot in this life, and I've certainly evolved. But I'm not rigid in this idea. Like, okay, I'll live this one life, and then I go to an afterlife. I may come back. I may not. And I started to look at a lot of the religious teachings differently, as I remember that there was a story about when Jesus came, the people were like, are you Elijah had come back, the prophet, and maybe you came back, or you're one of the prophets from old that came back? And I became aware of the fact that back then they thought people came back. Back then they were like, Jesus maybe came back, he was someone else. He's one of the prophets, he came back again to teach us. So it's like, okay, so there's not really the religion keeping that idea. It's like, okay, let me just kind of see.
Well, if you imagine that you're just here one time, you're going to act a lot differently, and you're going to go into actually the third option, which many people take. Which, remember, the first option, and they're not in this order, is service to others, positive. Second option is service to self, negative. Or the third option, which many people do, is they go into a sinkhole of distraction, right? And they keep coming back, and they don't do either. They don't do 51% service to others. They don't do the percentage of service to self that is required to be harvested. I believe it's 5, but the text goes into it specifically. They go ahead and just keep coming back, and they get distracted with all the things. There's a lot of distractions here. and they just keep coming back, and they learn a little bit more each time, but eventually they're going to make that choice. And they do, and if they're ready for harvest, they're ready for harvest. If they're not, and this planet goes to fourth density, and they can't be anymore, when they go, they're going to go to a different planet that has a third density available. Yeah. Right? And they go and they continue their life in the third density until they figure out what they need to do to be harvested, either negative or positively. And then you go on and further and further. And we'll talk about the next densities as we go. Okay. So that's the third density. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to go to the fourth density now.
Fourth density, positive. Love and understanding, heart chakra. Green ray, positive. 90,000 year life cycle. One can gain true understanding of love. Veil is removed.
Veil of forgetfulness.
Yeah, veil of forgiveness is removed. Knowledge and access to past lives and godhood, access to infinite intelligence. Social memory complex can be created later in the fourth density. Group access to knowledge and telepathy. This is all possible in the fourth density.
Yeah, so the third density, there was a lot of suffering. We came here, we went through some major catalysts. We made a decision to be positive, to do service to others, 51%. And now we are harvested, we go to the fourth density. And now the fourth density, we live much longer. We have a lot less suffering. We are coming from the heart. We're really learning about love. You know, we really get to learn that aspect of it. And we come from the heart chakra, the green ray. As opposed to the negative, fourth density negative, which is one where you skip, where you don't have access to the heart chakra. Imagine, there's no love there. When you go to the fourth density negative, now very few people actually go through this path. This is a service to self. This is greed. This is hatred, power mongering, no access to the heart chakra. You know, very few souls, even though it may seem like it's not the case. Many few souls actually go fourth density negative. So it's a much more loving place, the fourth density positive is, and it's much longer life because the suffering is severely reduced, and you know, it seems like a very, very good place to be, the fourth density positive is. So then you go to the fifth density. Fifth density is a place of wisdom. Now you're balancing out the love you received in the fourth density with wisdom. It's from the blue ray, the throat chakra. There's no more physical body. At this point in the fifth density, you are a body of light. You're learning deep wisdom and balancing with love and not being walked all over or a martyr. You know, when you, in the previous density, they talk about, well, in the fourth density, it's all about love. And at that point, maybe you put yourself out there a bit too much. You could be walked all over. You could become more of a martyr. And now in the fifth density, you're learning to balance it with wisdom. So you know how much to love. I guess not how much to love, but how much to put yourself out there and whatnot. So you get to balance that. There's wanderers at this point. Wanderers can choose to come back. A wanderer is a soul that chooses to come from a higher density down back into the third density to bring love and light and to spread and spread love and bring the vibration of the earth up and the vibration of those around us up. The book talks about how Buddha is a wanderer, how Jesus is a wanderer. They are, from what I understand, not fourth or fifth density wanderers, but they're sixth density wanderers. Ra, when he came down, is a sixth density wanderer. He chose to reincarnate in human form in the third density and to bring this information to the third density in Egypt at that time. So wanderers are it's a very admirable thing. It's a very sacrificial thing. If you think about it, they're in a higher density, a density of love, a density of wisdom, and they choose to go through the veil of forgetfulness. How about that? They choose to go through the veil of forgetfulness to come back to the third density to spread love and light. There's also negative wanderers. And this is very few though, because negative wanderers are very afraid to come back to the third density and go through the veil of forgetfulness because they're afraid that they'll choose to be polarized towards positive, because it's easier and better in a sense, if you'll, I guess, use that word, to become polarized towards positive versus negative. So they don't want to come back here and go through the chance that they may lose their negative polarity. So very few wanderers come back in a negative, as a negative wanderer, back to the earth. So anyway, so the fifth density is You can teleport, you can create matter, and you have abilities that most people like ourselves would be in complete awe of when you're at that point, because you've got rid of the limitations of the physical body. So that's the 5th density, blue ray throat chakra. Moving on to the 6th density.
6th chakra, unity and balance. It's the indigo ray, 3rd eye chakra.
3rd eye. So this density is 75 million years. Negative entities cannot move forward at this point. They have to reverse their polarity and become service to others to actually get to this point. Isn't that interesting? So you cannot be a service to self person at this point and move up in the chakras, or sorry, in the densities. At this point, which is really neat, is your higher self is given to you. Your higher self is a gift that you give yourself to help guide you. So for example, we all have right now a higher self that's helping to guide us. So when you pray or you meditate, for example, you can ask to speak and communicate with your higher self, because your higher self is able to help you to evolve and move forward. It's a very, very interesting concept. So that all happens in the 6th density, and that's where Ra resides. He's a higher density, 6th density being. I believe Jesus and Buddha were also 6th density beings as well, higher level 6th density beings. And then from there you go to the 7th chakra. The 7th chakra is the gateway violet ray crown chakra. Ra has not achieved this level and has limited knowledge of it. So when they talk to him in the book and they ask questions, he has a perception of it, he has some information on it, but he says, hey, I'm not in that density, so I have a limited understanding of it, a limited knowledge of it. But he still does give information. He says, at this point we merge with the source, and we allow our identity to be merged and absorbed by the source. So imagine water dropping back into the ocean. And this is the final density in the octave, and is a guide to the higher self. So this density is a guide to the higher self, and in 6th density. And at that point, you've merged with the creator, and they have an 8th density, even though they talk about 7 densities, but the 8th density is in a sense a new octave, like a music scale. So you know how like in a music scale, you can, that note that is also like the beginning of the next octave, beginning of the next scale. Yeah. This is the same thing, so it serves 2 purposes. So the 8th density is like the 1st density of a new scale of densities. So it also functions as the beginning of the 1st density as well. So those are the densities as given to us by the Ra group. We hope that you enjoyed them. We hope that it brought some perspective to your universe, and that you may look at things in a different light and see that we are all evolving, and understand our 3rd density. We spent some more time there so that you can have a better understanding of it. To me, this has been so powerful, understanding these densities, and I really, really recommend getting into the raw material. There's a lawofone.info website that the LLM research group has put out that has fantastic information on it. You can actually search words like density. You can put density, and it will go through all the different times that Ra spoke about density. So you can learn about it, or anything really. You can look up any word you want and they'll show it. So if you have information, you're like, I'm wondering about, reincarnation, or I'm wondering about service to self, you can just search those words, and everything that he said related to that can come up, so you can get a really good perspective on that. So that's on the lawofone.info. Really recommend you go there. Thank you. Like, subscribe, share. We hope we helped you guys out here with some good information. We really appreciate you taking this ride with us. And Hollywood Frequency appreciates you.
Till next time.
Thank you.